And good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another amazing week of food safety, food quality, all those things out there we know and we love and we trust. And you are responsible for making that way. And a lot of times nobody says thanks for doing that. It's an unsung job. And Alex and Clint here, we want to say today, good job. Good job. We appreciate all that you do. If you're new, this is the Food Safety Chat Live, and my name is Bryan Armentrout from the Food Leadership Group. And every Friday at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, we go live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and we talk about all things food safety. And that's key. This is not a presentation. This is a discussion, because as we were talking about a little bit before we went live, food safety, not a point of competition. We're all working on this together because the consumers, they don't care. They don't care what company we work for, what university we're at. All they care about is that the food is safe. So we always really enjoy that. So with that, we're going to get dived in here. So really excited here. So of course, Alex with Navigate Food Safety Systems, regular here on the show, who always has amazing things to say. Alex, how you doing today?
Very good, Brian. Thanks for asking.
And if anybody is familiar with the show, we know that you're at your father's home in Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. This is my father's den, the man cave.
I love that room.
My father's a bit of a reader.
You need a pipe. You need to have a pipe when you're sitting in that room. And then say English things like, what, right? And things like that. Everybody's filing in here. So of course, the lovely Marine is in Prince Edward Island, where I would imagine it's starting to get a bit of a bite of fall in the air, because it's definitely here in Colorado. I think it was in the mid 40s. Here last night, so a little chilly for sure. So Bon is here in Twin Fall. Nice to see you. Sean, of course, Tim is here. Love it. Sean, Joseph is here. So Joe in South Carolina is probably going to give us a bit of grief, but that's all right. We're ready for you. Bring it on. Oh wow, look at this. Ajin in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Wow, look at that. Austin, Morgan. Wow, we got a ton of people filing in here already. Of course, as I mentioned here every week, I am in Loveland, Colorado, where fall is here. Leaves are falling and all that fun stuff. And unless you live under a food safety rock, you must know who this guy is visiting with us as well today. It's Dr. Clint Stevenson from NC State. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, good morning, Brian. Good to see you. Doing all right. How you doing?
So excited. I mean, this is great. This is a demonstration of why connections in food safety are so important, because when Alex and I were prepping for the show on Monday, Alex suggested, man, we got to get Clint on here. This topic is absolutely perfect for him. And in the food industry, we're all only about one connection away from each other. And, you and I, we're familiar with each other, and we may have texted or things like this in the past, but I'm so glad that you're on here for the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for thinking of me earlier this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you in your office then at campus, or where are you?
Yep. Here at NC State University, Raleigh, North Carolina.
Nice. Beautiful area of the country for sure. Morgan's here, Jose's here, Elizabeth. Welcome everybody. So we got a ton of stuff to go over here today. So one of the things, Clint, that we love to do is torture our guests here on the chat. And so if I can, I always try and get a topical dad joke. So are you ready? Are you ready for the dad joke?
Bring it. I brought my kids got me this Father's Day mug for Father's Day a few years ago.
Nice. So. I love it. And actually, that's a good point. I'm gonna wet my whistle here as well. So everybody join us for a drink here. Thanks for that reminder. Cheers. So Clint, a friend of mine told me this story recently. A college professor was teaching his class, and they were a very bright class, but they were having a really hard time getting a hold of this concept that he was trying to teach. And he just kept going around and around with his class. And finally, he was standing in front of the group, and he said, listen, guys, I just don't get it. You're a smart class. You're not stupid. You should be understanding this, and I just don't get it. And he's like, all right, tell you what. If you're stupid, stand up right now. Just stand up so I know. And he looks around the class, and then one guy in the back, Johnny, kind of looks around and he sheepishly stands up and says, he just kind of stands there, and the professor's like, what, you think you're dumb? And he said, no, professor, I just felt bad for you standing there by yourself.
I love it.
Feel free to use that.
I will for sure. What a great icebreaker, right?
It's fun. The eye rolls are the best part. So see, Alex is having a bit of video freezing, which is kind of a bummer, but hopefully, Alex, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, awesome. Yep. All right, this will work just fine. One of the things we were talking about this also as we were preparing for the chat here is nature of the beast, right? Whenever you're doing stuff like this, something always kind of fritzes or is weird, and you just got to kind of go with the flow here. Got a graduate, PhD grad. It just says LinkedIn user, so we're not quite sure who you are. So if you want to identify yourself, let us know who you are. So we'll dive into the topic here. And so around that side, part of what I like to do then too is kind of catch up. So Alex, you're always super busy. What have you been up to lately?
Well, I was in Florida yesterday. We were teaching an internal auditor training and a BRC training. So that was good. Just in plant. So it was great. But it was it's the same type of training, Clint, that you've been going through. So that's good. And it was I always get the same, like a huge kick when people at the beginning, before we go in, like at the end, they tell us, before you came in, I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to do that. And now it makes perfect sense. This is completely achievable. And that happened again yesterday. It happened a lot when we do coaching, but when we do, like it works for the training as well. So just breaking down complex tasks like internal auditing. We're here to talk about auditing. So whether we do internal audits or external audits, they're very complex tasks. They're not simple by any stretch of the imagination, but we can break them down to tasks that are relatively simple. And then when you add them when you add them together, then you get the job done without the whole thing being very complicated, if you know what I mean. So
yeah.
Well,
what
we were up to. Oh, go ahead, Bryan.
Oh no, yeah, it's just a bit of a delay here, so we'll get through that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what we were up to last week, and one of the things that I've been really looking forward to doing is I've had conversations with technical managers, with different CBs, but also with different certification programs. And next week, this coming week, is the BRCGS Connect conference, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Jose Sanchez, who's the food program manager. So like basically with BRCGS, that's where the buck stops. So I want to show her our method of doing internal audit, which is not the usual one, but it's more practical. It's task based. They're simple tasks, but with that you find more problems and you fix more problems than by going through the checklist. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation this coming week. So that's a little bit of what's happening here. Anyways, plus
cool.
we've been chatting every week since IAFP, so that's another thing that's very exciting. But I'll let Clint explain what he's got
perfect.
there.
So Clint, what you were teaching some as well this week too, right?
Yeah, that's right. We had a group of auditors for the Department of Defense that audit all of their suppliers, supplying all of their military bases. We had 17 participants, as well as one of their higher ups, and we had Philip Pierce from NSF International. So it was an amazing group, 3-day workshop. Day one was some lecture, and then we went into our university creamery to start practicing like a mock audit type situation. And then the next day we went into 2 different facilities and did some mock audits there. And then yesterday was debrief. So thank God it's Friday. It was fantastic. It was a great, I think, growth opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, that's intense for sure. And I mean, so part of this, right, is it something that we talk about here on the chat quite a bit, right? Is you have all these processes, and auditing is critical. Alex was talking about having your third-party auditors and your internal audit teams. Is it's all one of the things we always talk about on here is plan, do, check, act, right? Everything kind of goes to that, right? Is okay, here's what you should be doing. Show us what you're actually doing. Did it go the way you thought? And if it didn't, what'd you do to kind of get it back on track? And the ability to diplomatically communicate that is very important, right? Because it's not black or white. A lot of times auditors need to understand that context. And one of the things I used to do in industry when I would look at hiring with different certification bodies to audit my facilities, and I had 17 plants within my organization. I would talk with the certification bodies and I would say, I want to talk to the top 3 auditors that you're thinking about sending to our plants. And I want consistency between my plants. In an ideal world, I want to minimize the number of people who are actually going in there, but I want to talk with them and understand how they audit. And they would kind of raise their eyebrows and I'm like, well, that's not very normal. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a normal guy. I would like to talk with them. And one of the questions I would ask during this process is, okay, you're in this plant and you're going through and you're auditing and you're visiting and things like this, and you're doing the tour. And you go in a back warehouse, and it's not one of the main warehouses. There's lots of storage back there, and it's not really being utilized. And you look up in a corner, and there's a bunch of cobwebs, and there's glass that's got a little crack in one of the windows to the outside. As an auditor, how would you approach that? And if that auditor would come back to me and say, well, according to 11 point blah, 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 I'm going to issue a 9 or 9 conformance for X, Y, and Z. I'm like, that's not the right auditor. They don't understand context. That window, if that was in the manufacturing floor in a GMP area, absolutely, write me up. A back warehouse, no. You should understand that that's not appropriate. Now, if you have a trend going and there's 9 broken windows in the warehouse, yeah, of course. But it was a good, quick check to level set around those. Does that make sense?
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah.
Here's my thought, Bryan. I like that's absolutely not what we're talking about today. However, that's something that is uber interesting. People don't evaluate their certification bodies. Okay, they just don't. They pick them at random. Okay, I generalize. Maybe some people do. In general, people don't. The people who evaluate your certification, how do you evaluate anything? How do you evaluate a supplier of raw material or a supplier of service? It's with a specification. So if I go in and I ask anybody on the call or anybody anywhere, where's your certification for audit services, let's say? Well, I hope you don't have one for audit services because your service is actually a certification service. You should have a specification for certification or a specification for certification. And then you should have expectations for what's appropriate for auditing, for an auditor to do. Basically, you were talking about nitpicking. Nitpicking, like does the auditor have reasonable, expectation, or are they nitpicking? Nitpicking is one of the things that we don't want from an auditor. But anyway, it's super fascinating. It ties in with training, because we have a specification for auditing. If you all want to see it, it's in our training. We have a training. It's a part of our lead auditor refresher training. Clint, you're taking that training right now. In the first module, we talk about the overall certification industry, and part of that is, what do you expect from an auditor? What do you expect from a certification body? What's your specification in those two things? So we've built our training based on that specification. First step in developing training, you need to decide what you want to achieve. And what we want to achieve, again, same training, is a fair and thorough audit. Mm-hmm. You're talking about consistency, and I would say that right now, auditors are set up to fail, because you've got a generic standard, you've got a specific situation, and let's say you've got a bakery. You've got bakeries like 100 or like 200 or 500 bakeries. We want those bakeries, we want that standard to be interpreted. Sean is talking about interpretation. We want interpretation, consistent interpretation for all this generic standard, let's say the BRCGS, the SQF, whichever it is. We want it to be interpreted consistently in all the bakeries. But what's our tool for consistent interpretation right now? What's the tool? It's personal. It's just like the auditor's personal experience. So within the system, we have we have designed inconsistency, I would argue, and if we want consistency, we need a tool to ensure consistent interpretation. That's how a system works. You either have it or you don't. And right now, well, let's say that I'm the devil's advocate right here, but if either of you want to be in the other seat and try to convince me that we're set up for success, I'll be glad to listen, I don't see it.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, and here's my segue to that, Alex, is that auditors are people. And when I was at Eurofins running the training and consulting groups there, the behind the scenes terminology for this is auditor calibration. We want all auditors acting the same and auditing the same and being the same. And they're not. Auditors are people. To your point, Alex, they have unique experiences and they have a unique background that they bring to those audits. Matching those up is really important. And around that side of it is really that piece of being an auditor. And that pool has been shrinking. And the number of available auditors out there is getting smaller and smaller. And it's been a recognized trend now for a long period of time. And there have been efforts to try and counteract that. But it's hard. It is hard being an auditor. And I think a lot of it comes back to that people side of it. It's getting harder to get qualified to become an auditor. You have to take a bunch of courses. In general, it may take you up to 6 months to become a certified auditor for a particular food sector category. You are on the road all the time. If you're a good auditor, you are constantly traveling and you are booked out 6 months, a year or more in advance. My best auditors at Eurofins, year and a half, 2 years, they were booked out. They were completely busy every single week. And we would try and cram as many audits in as we could to be efficient. Because if they were in Colorado, they're like, oh, great, you can go to this place, and this place. And imagine you're this poor auditor, driving from place to place and hotel to hotel and trying to write your report up on the weekend and remember what nonconformance you saw at what plant. It's not easy. And a lot of times these auditors are old guys like me, right? They were in industry and now they're at home, they retired and they got bored and they decided to become an auditor. And they used to be a VP of QA and they're used to having their own way. So they want things set up the way that they are used to things set up, and that gets in all kinds of problems too. But the big question out there is really around our topic for today is this future of food safety auditing. And the $1 million question out there, Clint, is, oh my God, how do we bring on this next generation of people who take up this mantle and start doing these activities?
Right, absolutely. And I've been wrestling with this since I was an undergraduate in food science, as a freshman in food science, thinking, a lot of food science programs, just about every one of them touts 100% job placement. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like a positive, but I think you can turn it around and say, maybe that's a problem, that we're not attracting enough talent into the industry. So, and then for, it's such a multidisciplinary field, and there's other disciplines that are related, animal science, plant science, veterinary medicine, public health, environmental health. So that's one of the initiatives that we've been working with Alex and a bunch of others, trying to create a combined effort to raise awareness about these careers and attract young talent, not only at the undergraduate level, but thinking even earlier than that. I think we can agree that there's a lack of awareness of these careers, whether you're going into auditing, regulatory, or food safety practitioners. Those are the three entities I think about. And even within food science, I think there's a lot of lack of awareness about the importance of the auditing side of the world, as well as going into regulatory. We have a lot of students who are excited about product development, research and development. A lot of them come to us because they grew up watching the Food Network or their favorite cooking show. So we've been finding some strategies to attract them to the discipline, because I think with Generation Z in particular, they want to be connected with the society that they're living in. So as soon as we raise awareness to the point that this is an opportunity to protect your family, your friends through public health, no matter which pathway you go into, you could be the person to save the day when it came to a product release procedure on a Friday afternoon or whatever. So those are the things we're working on, things I'm excited to talk about this morning.
Yeah, and as Alex and I were chatting over this earlier in the week, it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation, which is why I was telling that story about auditor awareness. In that there's a certain level of experience that you need. You need the academic background, but you also need that lens of practical real world experience. And that's kind of the missing link. And we were like, guys, there's got to be a better way to help teach these young people who are interested in pursuing this as a career. Because if we flip this around and look at it, to your point, Clint, what an amazing experience. It's like, how would you like to have a job where you get to go and look at all of these different industries, visit all these different operations, and have this giant perspective that you wouldn't normally get without 10 to 15 years of experience, if at all, right? And start giving them perspective and teaching them.
Roberto's got a point here, and and we've talked about that. I've talked about that with both of you. So it's a good. He's got a good kind of segue here. I think that auditing is not. I agree with Roberto. It's not a sexy career. And if I have to make a list of all the bad things, like being on the road all the time, being away from the people you love, long reports, all the things that are bad, like it's pretty easy to make a long list of that. So part of the job is to remove everything we can remove from that list of badness. But the other thing is to say, how could maybe we don't want to have food safety auditing as a career, but as one step in a bigger career that would be more sexy, that would be more attractive. It's a fantastic school. It's the best school I've ever been at. I've seen, I've seen so many places. I've seen so many different processes. I've met so many very nice people. It's super. It's a great part of a job. But if that's going to be your whole job, you're going to be the police, and maybe that's not enough. But I think it's a good stepping stone to being a food safety professional who goes in plants and helps people better understand, make their processes more efficient. Yeah. My card says food safety coach. That's what I do, and I think, as I said, every time somebody tells me, "Oh, I thought I was not capable of doing that," and now it's a piece of cake. It happens every day. It's like a huge rush. I know that people love being helpful like that. I know that a lot of people who are there to audit would love to be able to do that kind of stuff. So if we look at it as like, what are the stepping stones? What are the stepping stones to get people from college to, starting to work towards this or within this, then being maybe external auditors. Maybe you start with internal audits, then external audits, then we've got that thing where we've got the training, then you need apprenticeship. After you've apprenticed, then you need mentorship, then you need, these are the type of conversations that we're having to see how can we have an impact on the industry as a whole to bring in new people, because it's not going to work with people who are ready to retire. It's just not working. So we need to figure out a path. Anyways. In case it's not obvious, I find that pretty exciting.
And I think you bring up some really good points there, Alex, in that in other type of job applications, how does this work? I mean, so for example, like I talk about, there we go, in my book, is when you become a manager in any type of job, and my background in food is, I didn't go to school directly for food science. I didn't go to CSU or NC State or any of these other schools for food science. I was a microbiologist, and I kind of fell into the food industry. And then I became a manager. And luckily for me, I had a mentor in a critical situation who helped me out. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived in that role. That mentorship part, I think, is really critical, because in that auditing world, it's you work for a certification body, you go through some training, you have a shadow audit, and then there you go, right? Off you go. Bye, little ducky. So what do you think of that mentorship piece of that, Clint?
Yeah, absolutely. Alex and I have been talking about this a lot. I certainly value mentorship. 2 years ago, I took a sabbatical to do a deep dive into this auditing side of the world. And I had an amazing mentor who was runner-up for SQF Auditor of the Year. We talk on the phone almost every week, and I've had several opportunities to join him in on-site pre-audits, and he turns it around and says, all right, we're going to treat this as a witness audit. I'm going to be watching you. And then on the car ride home to the hotel, I get a lot of feedback. So I think that's, we can't say enough about mentoring. And the thing Alex and I have been talking about, I've been thinking about this a lot, is you compare this profession to other professions, and you can quickly make the case for, we need a licensure in food safety. If you think of other professions that come with licensures, my brother was a high school agriculture teacher for 10 years. He not only got his college degree, which is about the only thing we can do here in the food science department, but his junior or senior year in high school, he was not on college campus, he was on a high school campus as an apprentice, if you will, teaching for a semester, not every lecture, but he had the senior teacher there providing him mentoring as he would practice giving the lectures and teaching the labs and things along those lines. In addition to that, you know, he had to take an exam. You think of nurses, engineers who do public facing projects have to be licensed, attorneys have to be licensed. And the other thing that comes with the licensure that we don't have in our discipline is a requirement for continuing education units to stay calibrated, to stay fresh and up on your A game. So I think that's one thing we can make the case for, is think of what that paradigm would look like. The other thing that comes with licensures are things like accreditation, a lot more funding for education. Not that a licensure is perfect, but you can quickly become a program where we identify how many licensed, like my colleagues here who are in the ag ed department know how many licensed teachers they need in the state. And they're able to monitor that because there's a framework for that with policymakers and government organizations, nonprofits. It's a metric we can all look towards and strive to staff that workforce. And the other thing that comes with licensure is, you know, monitoring the effectiveness of the license itself, you know. So I think we could talk about that all out, what that would look like. But I think if we can move in that direction, that could solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, I love it. What do you think, Alex?
There's a comment by LinkedIn user. I don't know if it's Jay. He says there must be a balance between activities necessary to maintain the credentials and all that. So I absolutely, totally agree with Clint about the licensure. People talk about auditor certification in the field, like the certification of people. That's where GFSI is going. We totally need that. That is one piece of the puzzle that is missing. We're working on that. We're talking about that all the time. There's another piece of the puzzle that's missing, and we were talking about we didn't use, you know, like trying to draw more blood out of the stone. Like a lot of the industry, the way it's organized right now is that all the burden is on the auditors, not on the certification bodies, not on the certification programs to provide that training to, because like the auditors need to be paid for that work. And right now, there's a huge need for better auditors. There's a huge need for more consistent, all that. Believe it or not, the tools are there. Like I know because I've built them. Like I've built a whole bunch, but yet the market is not there yet because nobody's being forced to, like nobody wants to pay. The auditors don't want to pay. And I completely understand. The CBs, they just want to make more money. The CPOs, they just want to make, like everybody wants to make more money and pay less. So at some point we need something that kind of, what's the leverage or what's the leverage point that will say we all need to get kind of, everybody needs to be respected. Everybody's time needs to be compensated. It's not like, how do we make that happen? How do we create that as a market? Maybe an auditor organization. It's not the same thing as licensing, because licensing or certification of people is really, okay, you're good enough, you're not good enough. We've got a bar and you need to meet that bar, and we can have the training that goes with that to help you get there. And some other day we can get into the type of framework that we need for that, because we need a framework to start with, and we don't have time today to get in that. But it's not the same thing as let's say for a plumber to be certified, or for a nurse. Like auditing is extremely complex, but because you audit all those different categories, and because you audit 40 or 50 different programs, and there's anyways. But you also need the auditors to get together to have the power to say, no, we need decent treatment here, because we're not going to attract young people in a job where the relationship is a bit abusive, you know, like it's a big word, but I've seen a lot of the like auditors being well, not treated the best way possible by their certification bodies, and it's not well, that's not the way to attract people.
Right. Well,
That's
and yeah, I like what Clint is saying here relative to this standard, because part of the issue here is with the audits themselves, right? They're ran through certification bodies who then execute the audits, and that's who the auditors actually work for. The audit market has become commoditized. And so in my earlier example, when I was shopping around to find auditors for my plants, I was talking with 3 different certification bodies, and it kind of came down to, okay, which is going to give me the best price, right? So when you're looking at those shrinking margins associated with that, it puts a ton of pressure on the CBs. And to Clint's point, if you're doing that, then you don't have the money for education and training and offsites. You need to get those auditors out in the field. Another big problem I think we have in the auditing world is tools. To your point, Clint, what do kids live on, right? We expect them to go out and use an Excel spreadsheet to do an audit. And they're looking at a laptop going, what is this, Fred Flintstone? How do you even use this thing? We're not giving them the right tools either, are we?
Right. And I think the major tool, obviously, is the knowledge and the skills. And that's one thing we've been working on, having gone to 3 different universities studying food science. And wanting to go into food safety and quality. My first full-time job, I was embarrassed what I wasn't prepared for. Running graveyard shift at a cheese factory. I had 2 degrees in food science. I had a thesis, and I wanted to be a food safety practitioner, but I was constantly in the sanitarian's office asking, what's going on? What do I need to be doing right now? Constantly looking for a mentor. So that's one thing we're working on with our project. I'm excited to promote this morning. We have a USDA grant and a lot of collaborators. The goal is in 2026, we're going to roll out a turnkey curriculum that any educator can teach at an introductory level to undergraduates or community college students. A semester course, the first section of the course displays all of the careers in food safety, regulatory, certification bodies, auditing, food safety practitioners. And then the rest of the course is going to engage them in fun, scenario-based auditing activities. What would you do? So we can, whet their appetite. And we've built this food safety mentor network portal that we can connect the students and the educators with folks like you guys if they just want to chat with someone to ask what these careers are like, or bring in a guest speaker, or maybe even do some job shadowing so we can, bridge that gap and keep the interest going so we can go from an introductory level and encourage them to go, take more advanced courses, and here's where all the jobs are. So with any luck, in a couple of years, we'll, have a lot of educators promoting that curriculum in a way that's relevant to the careers in food safety that are in hot need.
Yeah, no, you got me thinking here too. And I'll throw this out here, Alex, and go ahead.
Want to put a link for the portal so everybody can go and check it out? Just put it in the chat, or I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, I got it right here. Yeah, we'll throw that in here.
So
as I'm doing,
cool,
come up here. There we go. Everybody should be able to see that link now. Perfect. And let's see, did that go in there? Yep, there we go. So Clint, you got me thinking there too. It'd be kind of interesting as well. Is so key to this, and this is kind of the theme around what our conversation's revolving around here today, is getting the young people interested and getting the resources for them to learn. Imagine now partnering with manufacturers, so Kraft Heinz or other large manufacturers, and putting together internship programs, because one of the problems on the food manufacturing side is we're insular. So I could be the best VP of QA in my company, and I've got fantastic programs, and I know how to train my people, and we're just knocking it out of the park. It stays in that company, and that's a shame. And it was something that would be like, I'd be like, how do I? Okay, fine, I speak at a conference every now and then. That's great. That's not the same thing. But if you had an internship program partnering with schools and people like Alex and other groups to say, okay, we're going to have you work here in the company, but for the next 2 years, you're actually going to go out and audit, and you're going to see the world, and you're going to see all these different types of companies. And in return, we expect you to bring back knowledge and new perspectives on how to do things better. Now, of course, no trade secrets, right? You can't do that. But processes are important, and how understanding what is world-class and what does that look like and how can I incorporate that? That's a huge incentive for food companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of the certification bodies, we've been talking to them, and what's exciting is it seems like they're ready to work together to solve this problem, because everyone has the same problem. So let's find synergy working together. We're winding up to make that happen, but I want to put a shout out to NSF International, who was on campus this week. They're going across the country to 10 different institutions this fall semester, rolling out their junior auditor program. They recruited yesterday several of our top students, and the idea is for retail audits. That's a great starting spot for undergrads in food science and other disciplines. They can work the night shifts, when restaurants are open, and the weekends when the CVs need to do those audits, to engage these students as part-time employees and provide the mentoring in place. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. I know Eagle Certification as well has done a lot of outreach at the high school level. So I'm excited to see where those initiatives go in the coming years, to engage students while they're students, to let them know if they like it or not.
Melody is on the chat right here with Eagle Certification, and we've been both independently talking with Melody. And Clint, one of the things that I really love about what you're doing is you're talking to all the certification bodies. We're talking to certification programs. So I think, Bryan, you're talking about collaboration with the manufacturing industry, and that's critical, and that needs to be part of the equation. The other part is collaboration with the certification industry, because the reality is a lot of the auditors work for several certification bodies. And when everybody's passing the buck, it's kind of fair in a way that, if you're auditing for me and you're auditing for 5 other CVs, I don't want to be paying 100% of your training. So figuring that out, and how can we all work together? How can we make it work? It doesn't have to be complicated, but it needs to be worked out. So I find that super exciting. Anyways, and I'm super happy to see Melody on the call as well. I want to say hi. So
we were talking about, as we were getting on the chat here as well, what a small world we work in, and we all know Melody very well, and we're happy that she's at Eagle and doing a great job over there for sure.
And Bryan, another quick shout out. ASI has a food safety scholarship, and I'm proud that one of my students got it this last year. And there's the SQF scholarships as well, right? There's about 15 to 20 students who get to go to that conference. So I think, initiatives are in place. We're already moving in the right direction.
So what we should say, Clint, is one of the things we're talking about is to put up a webinar with just kind of, at first, for just kind of not open to everybody, but just more open to the certification industry, so that we can compare notes with all the CVs that are doing, everybody's doing some things. Can we just open it up and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, and then bring that out to the broader public? But the different initiatives that you're talking about are all things that we think would be really good to, if we want to scale that, if we want to, rather than all be doing our own little things, learn from each other. So we're working on that, anyways. So that's that.
Yeah,
we're not quite set on the. Well, maybe we're set on the date, but I don't remember. So, anyways, that's one of the things we're working on.
I'm coming back to Clint's analogy with the licensing piece of it, right? So I mean, if we continue that analogy, it's like the construction industry. Auditing is like the construction industry. You have all these different competing construction companies that are trying to build houses, but they all want qualified electricians and plumbers and framers who know what they're doing, and that when they hire them, they don't have to train them. And even though these different contractors and these different companies are in direct competition with each other, they all need the same resources. It's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can look in these other industries and think of how they have trade organizations focused on that. In food safety, we have how many different conferences we can attend in different societies, But I don't know that anyone in particular is specifically focused on the workforce recruitment, development, and training and calibration and things along those lines. So I think part of our dream here is to create whatever you call it, a consortium or an alliance where members pay dues that fund these initiatives, starting at the middle school, high school pipeline, all the way to the tail end of it, maintaining calibrations and things along those lines. So we'll give it a go, see what happens here.
Well, and I mean, back to Alex's point, I mean, so if I'm running a certification body and I'm expected to take out of my profits training of the auditors who also work in some cases part-time with other certification bodies, that's not a productive process. And there's also situations where you have an auditor and you spend a lot of resources training that person in your organization, then they leave and go somewhere else. And they make a little bit more money and then you're out all of that. So there's definitely a lot of improvement to be made in that area. And just the tools piece of it. I'm gonna vent a little bit here. A few years ago, I went in I created a joint venture with a software company, and I created an auditing platform on a tablet for SQF, where you could take it out on the floor, voice to text, all the goodies. It went nowhere. The auditors hated it. They wanted their Excel files, and it just drove me nuts.
Okay, Bryan, one of the things, and somebody mentioned that in the chat earlier, one of the things that we, like at Navigate Food Safety, we've been nurturing relationships with the certification programs, okay? And like I collaborate with the food managers at different certification programs because I think some things every problem needs to be resolved where it's happening, at the level where it's happening. And the complicated and like the 50-page reports, they just have to go. They serve no purpose whatsoever. They do not, and they waste the auditor's resource, and they focus on, they force auditors to be focused on the paper, and they force the auditors to be doing a checklist audit, which is the complete opposite of a system audit. Okay,
right.
So that's a conversation that needs to happen at the certification program level. But documenting compliance and documenting compliance is one thing, and writing a paragraph for each item in the standard is a different thing. Now we want people to write long paragraphs of explain the nitty-gritty of everything they saw. That is absolutely not aligned with doing good work. Nobody can do good work with that. I can't do that. If I've got to spend, all my time gathering information to write a report, I'm not spending my time challenging programs. I'm never going to do a thorough audit. That's not true. I'll do a thorough audit anyways. But it's really difficult to do a thorough audit and to write that report at the same time. I've stopped auditing because of that. Because I want to be doing a thorough job. So we need to have those conversations. I'm glad to brag about the fact that I'm having those conversations with several CBOs. So we're pushing in that direction to make the work of auditing more about challenging programs, and how do we structure the audit so that the auditor can bring back objective evidence that they have challenged the programs thoroughly. But it's not, objective evidence is not just paperwork, who have you interviewed, what did you talk about, all kinds of other stuff, so that you can do a thorough audit and then focus your time on the on what's important, which is the non-conformances. So I'm just saying that about the spreadsheet. If the auditors don't like the spreadsheet or didn't like the portal and wanted the spreadsheet, there's probably a reason. Now, whether it's a good reason or a bad reason, maybe they could copy and paste with the old one, which, copy the back report and just paste it in there. And that would be just kind of a way for them to not have to say something new for every paragraph. Rewrite the whole report. I'm not saying the reason is always a good reason, but if we understand the reason, we might say, oh, okay, maybe your platform would have worked really well if they didn't have to write a 50-page report in the first place. And that's where fixing the problems at the right level, but also in the right order, is important. Maybe if we didn't have that 50-page report, your platform would have worked wonderfully. But because of the 50-page report, it's not that the platform wasn't good, but it wasn't adopted because that big problem there still had to be resolved. But anyways, yes.
Yeah. Well, to reflect back on that, I think part of this, and this circles back to what we were talking about earlier in our conversation, guys, is that this is the people element associated with it, right? Every job that we do has there's a certain pain in the ass level you reach, and it's just like, I'm done with this, right? And we're not addressing this from the people side of things, and looking at auditors as human beings and saying, okay, is this a career path that people are going to be proud to follow, is enjoyable, is well rewarding, and has a bright future for them? And that's what attracts people, right? You can't just say, all right, hey, I'm going to train you to be an auditor, and that's your career for the next 30 years. No, people don't want that. They want to grow. They want to advance. They want to be successful. How do we give them that? And we need to look at that people side of things, right? People circumvent the audit reporting, to your point, Alex, because it's a pain in the butt. How can I make this easier? How can I take shortcuts? It's the same thing in plants. If a worker finds what he considers to be a more efficient way to do things, and you don't know about it from a food safety standpoint, oh boy, you could be in some big time trouble.
Right. And Alex and I have been talking about mentoring. Like I said, I've had great mentors, especially during my sabbatical and since then. But it's that feedback component that I think gets lost a lot. I didn't get a ton when I was new, working graveyard shift, probably because no one was there but me as the supervisor. But I think that's one thing we can think about. Several years ago, I noticed a lot of football teams would, in addition to giving stickers to people on their helmets, they would start rolling out like the professional wrestling belts as like a reward for making a big tackle or something like that. And I've been thinking about how can we make food safety fun while providing mentoring? Because there's a lot of stereotypes in food safety. You say, who wants to be a food safety inspector? But people don't have constructs to use to make it that's fun, to think of it in a fun way. So One thing I want to put a plug in here for, about a year ago, I started realizing for our students in food science, they have all of these fun extracurricular opportunities that when they get out of class, you see them in the lobby and the hallways working on their product development competition. That whole industry, a lot of these companies, there's so many competitions for product development. A lot of employers give people a hiring bonus as if they've worked 6 months because they did during their college experience preparing for this competition. We also have a quiz bowl through the Institute of Food Technologists. So a couple of us a year ago were going, wait a minute, what's the fun food safety extracurricular activity that would get students excited that they could compete, just like the product development competition. Students compete at the regional level so they can go to the national level. And it's a great recruitment event. If you get to recruit that winning team, that's amazing. So one thing, we're just going to do it. It's not going to be perfect this first year, but the week before Thanksgiving, I'm planning a food safety escape room style estate event where there's going to be 6 stations where we bring teams of students through, and there's going to be interactive role play from local industry people who are auditors or SQF practitioners. I'm going to give them role play cards because to practice doing an audit, you need to interact and interview someone. We're going to have records. We're going to have scenarios, and then there's going to be a fun networking event at the end of it. So I'll let you know how it goes. I'm hoping we can kickstart it here on campus, and then it goes from there to just showcase how fun food safety can be as a team activity while also facilitating the feedback. Because if you don't win, you're going to get feedback on how you can continue to grow, if you know what I mean. So let me know if you want to come to Raleigh the week before Thanksgiving.
I love it. I love it. So Joe brings up a good point here, is the people side that we were talking about as well, too. And I was kind of surprised to hear about this earlier this week, that during COVID, one of the things that we were doing is remote audits, and that remote audits are still taking place. Is that true, Alex? Are you seeing that out there?
So I don't know. And I'm not a big fan. I'll say that.
No.
I don't see how remote audits can, I don't see how you can, I see how you can look at records remotely, and an audit is not about the records.
Mm-mm.
Like in our system, like you've got people, you've got paper, records is a type of paper, and then you've got the physical plant. And really, the audit is not like, so when I was talking about the kind of the incremental steps, you've got a method to look at people, not to look, but to kind of assess people, and you do interviews and observations, and so that needs to be structured. We've got a structure for that. You need a system to look at paper, vertical audit. So if I was doing a vertical audit online, I can do that anytime because it's just paperwork. I can look at any paperwork online. The plant doing an inspection virtually with like the Google glasses or anything like that, are you kidding? Like, of course you can fake it, but you can't do it for real. It's absolutely, you're not going to see anything. Anyways, that's not going to happen. And then but the important thing is after that, you have to put all that together and do kind of process audits, where you're really looking at the people, the paper, the plant, and for one process, for pest control or whatever. It's the bringing of all that together. You can't do that remotely. I don't believe that for 1 second. So,
Nope.
So for vertical audits and for looking at paperwork, maybe. But anything else, I don't see how that. I'm not convinced. I'm utterly unconvinced. But
Me too. And I think that gets to the point as well that auditing is a auditing of people and processes. And so part of that, and I think this is where the academic side, Clint, really comes in as well too, is teaching people the skill set associated with interviewing and root cause investigation and investigations, and teaching them how to do those things, because those aren't taught. And that's one of those experiential things you have to learn by fire. As Alex knows, I rail on this all the time. If I would get a corrective action back from my suppliers or my plants that said retrain operator, I knew they did absolutely zero work on actually finding the root cause of that. And I think that's an area that's really lacking. What do you see?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I admitted how unprepared I was when I took my first real full-time job. And I encourage everybody to do outreach to your local university that teaches whatever discipline. Food science is the one I've gone through. It's a natural pathway to food safety. It's the closest one I can think of, in addition to environmental health, public health type disciplines. But in my experience, a lot of department heads and faculty at these institutions are unaware of this problem. They're doing their research, they're teaching their classes. So I think there's an education component there. We're planning to do outreach to the Council of Food Science Administrators to make sure they're aware of the problem. And from there, we can build, maybe through the consortium or alliance idea we mentioned earlier, to identify what are the core competencies that we expect undergraduates to exceed in. I think the best thing we have is the Institute of Food Technologists Higher Education Review Board, which approves individual food science programs through an assessment component. What's exciting is there's a task force I'm on this fall to relook at those curriculum standards. But I think a lot of these competencies that you just mentioned, Bryan, have yet to be carved out. Alex and I were talking last week about what are the competent. Is there a body of knowledge out there for this that is actively being implemented and evaluated? So
Right.
Yeah. The American Society for Quality, someone mentioned them in the chat. I think that's the closest thing. They do have a body of knowledge through their certification for food safety and quality auditors. I don't know how popular that is, but that's a starting point. I think that program promotes knowledge, and the next step is to promote skills.
Yeah.
So I'll say like 19011, the ASQ, all that kind of stuff. Next week we'll be at BRCGS, Clint. We'll be talking about stuff, and I'll show you a little bit of the stuff that we've done on that. I'm super happy to. I don't want to dive into the details of that. When you look at when I look at that, I will say this is what we need. Like, if these are the skills that I've listed that are required for auditing, this is what I see in ASQ, or maybe this is what I see in ASQ. I've got a detailed analysis of their body of knowledge. So I'm not saying it's not good, and I don't want to send the wrong message. Melody just there says, there's good things happening. Listen, this is fantastic. Sure. I want to say we are so much on the right path. I've been looking at this for 20 years, or for the longest time. we were just talking about it behind closed doors because we couldn't even talk about it. Now people are talking about it. Now there's momentum. Now it's all good. It's all good. There's work ahead of us, but this guy is not complaining. This guy is really happy that we're talking. And the body of knowledge, again, it's complex, but we'll get there. Like, that's part of what we're doing. And it's really good.
Well, I think too, like Jonathan is saying here, why do large companies require their own audits? Like, I'm thinking of Costco or something like this. It's because they don't trust.
Because
right?
they don't trust. They don't trust. And we're back to, we need to understand what the customer wants. I'd say they want fair and thorough audits. And if they're not getting fair and thorough audits, that's the spec for a certification. It's not even the audit. They want fair and thorough evaluation. The audit is one small part of that. We're too focused on the audit, not understanding the impact of the whole process on it. It's not going to be fair and thorough if we're just pinning everything on the auditor. So we need to understand the big picture. What they want to trust their suppliers, and if the audit is supporting that trust, then it will work. Or if the certification supports that trust. But unfortunately, some are good and some are not so good. And we're at the 5-minute mark, Bryan. So
we are. Yeah. That's a very good summary, Alex, and thank you for that reminder. So as we kind of summarize this and bring it back up to the 30,000 foot level, this is a topic that can be really frustrating because we can kind of see a path forward, but there's a million different roads to the top of the mountain. What would you like to leave people with today, Clint?
I would like to invite everybody to let's come together. My PhD advisor always talked about the parable of the blind man and the elephant. One's holding the foot and thinks it's a tree trunk. One's holding the tail and thinks it's a rope or something like that. But by working together and communicating together, let's do it together. Find a forum. So like Alex mentioned, we're planning a webinar type format where everyone interested in highlighting their initiative to highlight what they're doing for workforce development. And we're hoping we can parlay that event into an in-person meeting to build buy-in and a work group that could kickstart whatever we call it, consortium alliance. Because if we pool our resources together, imagine the synergies we could find. So,
very well said.
I think my contact information should be easy because I'm a university professor. Just Google my name. You can find my email or contact me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And so Clint wrote a very nice article on this issue here recently in foodsafety.com. So there's a link for that. Thank you very much, sir. And I think, I'm encouraged by this because we're recognizing there's an issue and we're looking for the right path forward as a group, right? We've tried the approach of everybody trying to do it individually. Okay, that's not getting us the result we want. So let's try and change our approach, which is the right way to do anything, right? You have to be willing to adjust course and figure out the right way to do it for sure. And on that note, one of the things that I've been working on as well is, and I'm doing a webinar on this Tuesday to kind of talk with people about this, is actually doing risk assessments. And what I've been looking at and studying a lot is looking what other industries are doing to manage risk in their fields. We're all very familiar with auto insurance, right? Our rates are based upon how risky we are as a driver. Finance, banking, aerospace, all these other industries out there are using risk assessment tools to manage and mitigate risks in their business. We're not really doing that in food safety. So I put together a presentation on how we can use these tools and what we do to make our businesses safer, because that's one of the problems that we really don't talk about in everything that we were discussing here today is, okay, auditors go to plants. Great. A lot of risk for food safety comes from corporate. If the R&D people aren't trained in that product development on allergens or how to have good changeovers or cleaning of equipment, it's going to cause problems in the plant. Or procurement doesn't understand that their decisions are impacting food safety. It all trickles down to the plants, and then we try and manage it down there, and it doesn't always work for sure. I feel like, Alex, I need to give you a final word here as well. Any other closing?
The word is exactly the same as Clint's. I don't need to add anything. We're talking about that. Like on Monday, we're saying, we need to have a working group. And I said, Clint, there's two of us. We've got a working group. So everybody's invited to join our working group. Like we're doing it. Like we're just doing it, and this is part of it. And again, like I think every comment that I've seen on the chat, everybody's excited about this. Everybody sees the same problem. We need to work together, and let's just get it done.
Absolutely. Well said. So with that, guys, we're going to bring our chat to a close for this week. Dr. Stevenson, thank you for joining us. Really enjoyed it. You were an awesome guest.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Great to see you again, Alex. Twice in 1 week.
Yeah, and Alex is always a font of information for sure. So with that, guys, we're going to bring the chat to a close. And we will be back here, of course, next Friday at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, live streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube, where I'll bring amazing experts like Alex and Clint onto the chat to have a discussion with you. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. You've earned it. Have a little bit of fun. Go out in the sun. Enjoy the fall weather. And we'll see you back here next week. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you being here because this is a big investment, and we thank you for that as well. So thanks, guys, and we'll see everybody next week.
Fantastic.